What to unlock? Okay, I'm doing a new phone. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully it'll work. I got a few things I'd like to speak on. I'm on a new phone because of it was required to do it. I mentioned the other day, it takes like 2 days to set up my phones. So this one I'm on is a new one. I bought it like 8 months ago, but it took time to set up and I wasn't ready to transition. But as I was working on them after a 2-day job of one of them, I uninstalled Google Chrome on my old phone because I had to work on that old phone. I didn't have enough space. I ran out of old. I have extra card for space, but it was filled up on the phones if you're familiar with them. So I said, well, let me just disable as many apps or move as many apps into the storage, external storage, and so forth. So either way, I said, well, let me try Google Chrome if I can disable that because I still have Google. And then it deleted like half the apps, which meant a whole nother day that I had to do after doing all the work. So I transitioned to this one. I meant to test it. I believe it's on. I'm trying to take this jacket off because this is the first time I'm recording on this new device. So I don't want to do too much news right now. I want to teach you a few interesting things. But I just want to say it's December. I don't know. It's December. It's February of 2022. The end of February 2022. And I'll just make a few notes for us as Christians and how we should be more concerned with things that took place, regardless of the political aisle that you're on. I mentioned one of the first military actions that our country took under Mr. Biden was the killing of some kids. This took place, I covered it, and it took place when we bombed a vehicle in Afghanistan, believing it was a, quote, terrorist, and we killed an aid worker and his children, okay? There should have been more of a national repentance, acknowledgement, and discussion about that. And there was none. And the official word of our president was it was a great success what took place in Afghanistan, overlooking the killing of those kids by our military. And I don't disparage our military, but that was something that Christians should have been more concerned about. That did we kill kids and not even think about it? And I believe we did. I believe most of the church, most of the ministries, pastors, all the things that take place, all the concerns of money for the ministries and all this, there was hardly any concern about a bunch of kids that the U.S. government killed, granted by accident, okay? And then there was another. These are the few military actions that our country took in the last few weeks and months. There's not a whole lot, but then we did another military action a few weeks ago. And it was done for all various reasons that I can't get into because I plan on teaching. But there was a need maybe to change the narrative in the media. So we bombed and killed a terrorist leader of a particular group in Syria. And it had to do with too much that I'm not going to deal with Russia being in Syria and the United States being in Syria. And sure enough, lo and behold, a whole bunch of kids were killed again. Now, this is the second military action taken, as I can remember. And in both of them, we killed a bunch of kids. And this one was so overlooked, you might not be aware of it. But what happened was there was a particular, fortress area house that a man was in. And supposedly we located that man and we went in with great force and demolish that place. And I saw the pictures in the video, and a bunch of kids were killed. And then, for whatever reason, our government put out the statement that the man blew himself up and his kids because he didn't want to be captured. Wait a minute. And I saw the pictures of the home and the compound that was bombed. And I'll tell you, those were American rockets that hit that place. And yet we said he killed himself and his kids. Now, whether we lied or the government lied, I don't know. But those are two military actions that killed a bunch of kids. And many of us don't even know about that. Many of us are not aware of it. And many pastors, ministries, and churches today are all just concerned about how many people will be tithing tomorrow because we have all these goals. You know, and Jesus, he's walking in the first century. And he said, look at injustice. Look at what's happening. Look how you treat your fellow man. These are very important aspects of the kingdom of God. Thou shalt not kill. And I just mentioned those two because many of us are not aware, the date of today, whatever it happens to be, that these events just took place. And that stuff like that cannot stand. Any society, if you quote accidentally or whatever happened, and two military actions back by back just so happened to kill a lot of kids, and there was no accounting, there was no outrage, there was no injustice, no naming of the names of those kids we killed in two events. And a quick, oh, he blew himself up, that's it, quick, go to the next story. You see, a society, a government cannot stand with injustices like that. Now, the reason I turned this on, besides it's the first test of this, it says it's locked, so I don't know, I'm hoping this is on. Because I'll be upset if I speak and it's not recording. I read the other day, just reading through my normal reading, I happen to be in the book of Job. And so then I read Job, and I'm in, like up to chapter 5. And I came across the verse again. And it says, thou shalt know that thy habitation or tabernacle shall be in peace, and you will visit your habitation and you will not sin. It's a good verse. And as I read it, I said, well, that's another one I quote on a regular basis in the last few years, maybe, thousands of times. And it came to my mind again that, well, there's one I quote. It's in Job. And please, this is not to say John quotes the whole Bible or anything special. But as I looked at that, I said, now, that happened again when I read Micah chapter 4, chapter 5. And then it happened when I went to one of the Psalms. And what I want you to see, there was a dynamic that I said, statistically, this is really not possible. Just going through the scripture as slowly as I am, 2 chapters an evening, 1 chapter 2 an evening, much slower. So I read through scripture, but I don't read through the whole Bible every year. I used to, at a certain rate, but I go through it consistently. And I'm thinking, how am I'm not saying I'm special or anything like this. As I saw that verse and said, well, there's another one that I was not familiar where it was. And then I came across and I quoted it. I said, how could it be that I'm running across so many of those? Meaning, in the daily routine of quoting, praying, and quoting scripture in the morning, in the evening, it's a certain routine. It's statistically not possible for me to be coming across that many. Micah chapter 5, it was 3. I'm quoting 3 out of Micah chapter 5, like on a daily, regular basis. Now it's Job now, and so what hit me was not so much he quotes. I don't quote the whole Bible. What hit me was, how is that happening? And I keep coming across those. And if the odds of the the rate that I'm reading and the odds of the small amount of verses that I quote regularly on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, it just isn't, the odds are not that I would run across that many. And I remember the account that I mentioned on a previous video that Jesus, when he appeared to the two disciples on the Emmaus Road, and he opened up their eyes and they understood after the resurrection, this was Christ. He revealed himself to them. And it says he expounded unto them all things in the scriptures concerning himself, beginning at Moses and the prophets. And it's interesting, most of us understand that. That's when Jesus rose from the dead, and all of the disciples yet did not fully see that he rose. And he appears to them and shows himself alive to all of them, including Thomas. But how did he expound all things in the scriptures concerning himself? Because there's a lot. And then there's a time, you know, we're in an eternal kingdom right now. We have eternal life right now. And that deals with time. Time is really big. It's an interesting mystery to many of the thinkers. I got Einstein up there, or a good biography on Einstein. Time, and most of us don't think about it in scripture. You have chronos, chronological time, kairos, a season of time. Galatians talks about that. Sent forth, Jesus was sent forth, made of a woman, made under the Lord, redeemed them that were under the law. And that was a kairos season. So that's a type of time that is a season of time. To everything, there's a season and a time to every purpose. So what I was just meditating on was, when you're in the kingdom, things can take place that you would think it takes a lot of time in the natural for certain things to happen. But in the kingdom, these things are at times transcended. So if I statistically sat down and said, okay, how many of the few verses I quote on a regular basis, how many times, and how could Jesus have expounded unto them all things concerning himself? You see, because there's this, you're out of a dimension, you're in a dimension of God's kingdom, which is eternal dimension. But we have a short span in the natural. And so he expounded unto them all things. So there's so many. King David, at one time in his life, on the run from Saul, and then he goes into certain hands of the enemy, and he realizes they're going to recognize it's King David. He says, our enemy. This is before he ascends unto the throne. And it says he acted like a madman. He acted crazy. Bible students, you're familiar, pastors, you're familiar with that. And so they said, well, that's not King David. He was like drooling, and he feigned insanity. Now, how is that a type and a picture? Because there's so many there's a time in the New Testament where the family of Jesus says they worry that he's out of his mind. They're concerned of his mental stability. This is in the Gospels. And so David pictured, and in a type, that actually would happen. That they would say one day to the Messiah, just like they said about King David, he's out of his mind. So if David, I guess, didn't feign it that day, because we know he faked it, God could have caused him to go insane like King Nebuchadnezzar. For 7 years, King Nebuchadnezzar was out of his mind. He grew hair like a wild animal, and he lost his mind. The scripture teaches that. So I just shared that one thing to say there were so many things in the scriptures that speak of Christ, that the time John, in John's gospel, at the end of John's gospel, it says many of the things that Jesus did, which are not written in this book, this gospel, but these are written that you might believe. So there's so many events in the kingdom of God. I read, let me try to hit a few notes. I was sitting by the water yesterday, but a few days, and I might have took place yesterday. It's just a spot. It's kind of under the bridge, but if I park a bit up by the side, I can like pray out loud, and people won't think I'm insane, because they're not hearing me as much, and I'm working on the phone. But some Hispanic kid with tattoos on his face. I say kid, maybe in his 30s, But then he stopped, and it's real desolate. And I could see he was probably hesitant to ask, and because I'm sitting there and I had the hood on, it's cold. And he said, "Man, do you have a tire pump?" I have an electric pump, but my thing doesn't work in the car. You plug it in. I said, "Brother, I don't have a pump." But he said, "Well, I got this bike and it's flat." I said, "Look, here, take this $3 offering, brother." And he's looking at me. I said, "Yeah." I said, "I got a lot of friends in the streets all over the place." You got to understand, it was just me and him under the bridge, nobody else around. He's got the tattoos on his face. But that's like my friends. So right away, I was like, "Here, now take this, man. All these guys in the streets are my friends, brother. I do street ministry." Gave him a few dollars. I said, and then I talked to him for a little while. And then just right in there, like I knew him forever. And then as he turns around to leave, now please, this is not to say anything special about me. As he turns around and he leaves, he looks and he says, "I have not met somebody like you in a long time." I said, "Oh, thank you, brother. God bless you, brother." And I just thought, I'm sure I don't know his history, the tattoos on the face, all the, somebody that you would deem, oh, this is somebody, either a gang guy or on the street or whatever. But I'm sure he was a young boy at one time. And I'm sure people showed him grace throughout his life. But then you get to a stage, if you're involved in crime or whatever your background might be, and then you don't see that anymore. What you see, what you experience as somebody with tattoos on your face, Hispanic on the street, maybe in and out of jail possibly. What you don't experience anymore in a long time is people just saying, "Hey, what's up?" Or "How you doing?" Or what you experience at that stage. I don't know his whole history, but it's people saying he's messed up, maybe prison, whatever happened. What they experience at that stage, they don't experience grace at all, for the most part, from society. Society at that stage usually deems them, there's terms we use for that they're beyond, fixing. And it was just an interesting insight, because it wasn't nothing that I did, except just what I think he surprised him was I was immediately like his friend. Like, not get lost. I was like, "Hey, here, I got a few dollars. My tire pump ain't gonna work for you, brother, but here's a few." And he didn't have a 10-minute or 5-minute conversation with somebody probably in a long time that would, in a sense, accept him or not be afraid under the bridge alone. That's why he was probably hesitant, because maybe a lot of people would be like, "Oh, no, get low. Oh, this guy, he's got tattoos, call the cops." That's all. It was just grace. That was it. Nothing special, but it stuck with me. Let's see. Jersey City. Jimmy, Jersey City. There's got to be something on that note. Arthur. Let's do Arthur. These are a few gifts here, and I put them out last week, knowing I was going to hopefully remember to mention this little incense thing. And I got another little incense thing. Arthur was a friend of mine for many years. He gave me those few little gifts over the years. They dumpster dive, the homeless guys, and they find things. Sometimes they find nice things in dumpsters. And so over the years, Arthur said, "John, I found this," and they'll find things and sell them, But he said, "I thought you'd like it, because it's like incense for the ministry." And there's a few others I have outside, different things, because Arthur died. And I knew Arthur for 25 years. Artie. Some of you friends of mine might not know that yet, that are from the Bluff. So Arthur died. Artie. He had cancer. And he was just a very interesting person. He was like a pro surfer at one time out in California. He was real gifted. He was an excellent fisherman, and he used to lay tile, all types. Had a career, but he got, got into the drug scene throughout his life. I remember one time he got in some trouble and he had to get disciplined. He had to get beat up because of certain things that took place. This is years ago. But he kind of said, John, I chose a particular lifestyle, and that's part of the rules of what happened. And I said, yes, I get that, Artie. But Artie passed away. He was gifted, Artie, talented. And I remember one time when I was doing these Bible studies in different towns, and I had a little particular point. I said, well, Lord, always give me at least 2 people from Corpus that go with me. And then if we meet other friends in Bishop, Kingsville, or up to San Antonio, making the route, doing all these home groups, Bible studies in all the cities every week, I said, I always want to have at least 2. And I was at the mission one day here where I live. I said, man, I got to go to Bishop, Kingsville, wherever it was. A lot of my friends went. Shrek and all these friends used to go. And I just do a Bible meeting, fellowship, buy them snacks, and that was it. Spent the whole day, out of the cycle that they're in. But Arthur and Huey went one day. And look, Huey, they're both passed away, but they were, on the streets for years. And they didn't have time to spend a whole day with John at one of his Bible studies in Bishop. But I needed 2 people. And I didn't have, Henry wasn't there that day. And I said, Huey, Arthur, I need 2 people. All right, we'll do it. We'll, like a favor, they did it. And we got in the car, drove 40 minutes, spent a couple hours in Bishop, drove back. And I thought, they sacrificed whatever other plans that Arthur and Huey had that day and all the things you do in life. They made a sacrifice. We'll go and hang out with John, take the ride, our ride there, our ride back, 3 hours over there. We'll sacrifice a day just to kind of help John. And they were involved, and you actually got to share a little bit about the Lord, his history at the meeting we did. So I just commend, times where people have been gracious, even though they are in straits, dire straits, that they'd be able to set aside some time. Now, let's see, let me just mention this about Job. I got Arthur, I have something about Jimmy, Jersey City. Oh, a few years ago when I was walking the streets of New York and New Jersey and I walked so many miles. And I like walking at night. And I walked the whole hometown, So I'd leave the house late at night, either go to New York at midnight so I could be there at midnight. Just, look, it's beautiful. It's New York City at night. Look how nice it is. Walk through Harlem, walk through the Bronx, walk the bridge. I bought this jacket, just came to my mind. It's a leather jacket. I was walking all the way down to Jersey City from North Bergen. These are all towns and areas where I grew up. And I walked into an old Salvation Army, one of those types, and I bought that old leather jacket because I used to have one as a kid. But I remember as I was making these trips, where's Johnny? He walked to New York because I'd walk from my house up to the George Washington Bridge, over George Washington Bridge, into New York City, into Bronx and the Harlem, walk through Harlem, beautiful, beautiful walks in Harlem, and it was just nice. Every place that the soles of your foot have tread upon that I've given you. But I remember one of my mom's friends, his name was Jimmy, and he was a black friend, and he lived in Jersey City. He had a little auto mechanic shop in Jersey City for many years. He was just a friend of my mom, and I met him a few times. But my mom would say, because I'd be up in New Jersey, and maybe Jimmy would be at the house, or he'd call my mom, whatever. Where's your son? Oh, he's walking in Jersey City, like at 9 o'clock at night. And I remember he said, and he lived in Jersey City. He had a business in Jersey City. And I'm there visiting, doing walks. And he told my mom, he said, he's going to get shot. Like, it's not when he grew up as a kid. And I share that to say, it was just an adventure to go, to be out and to be in the streets. And I certainly saw a lot of people there looking at me, walking New York City or Jersey City, and I would be recording, coming down the street, moving fast because I felt there was a mission there. and I'd see people hanging out, There were gunfires not went at me, and they must have thought, who is this guy walking? Because I was on a mission. But the point I'm making is not that this God will be with you when you feel like you need to finish your course and you need to be where you need to be to finish that course. Get out of the city and dwell in the fields, even in Babylon, and there I will be with you, and there I will deliver you from the hand of the enemy. And so part of our work in the kingdom of God, it's being outward focused. It's being concerned about injustices, like I mentioned at the beginning of this little talk. And it's us not building some type of business model. It's looking, it's seeing that there's things going on. Now let me just end. This was interesting as I happen to be reading Job. This is, if I read it, so one of the responses of Job's friends, those of you that are familiar with the book of Job, this is chapter 4. But if I read it and didn't tell you this was in the Bible, you would maybe be not aware or say, is that really in the Bible? So this is one of Job's friends that are giving the responses to Job and his plight. Now a thing was secretly brought to me, mine ear received a little thereof. In thoughts from the visions of the night, when deep sleep falleth on men, fear came upon me, and trembling which made all my bones to shake. Then a spirit passed before my face. The hair of my flesh stood up. It stood still, but I could not discern the form thereof. An image was before mine eyes. There was silence, and I heard a voice saying, shall mortal man be more just than God? Shall a man be more pure than his Maker? Behold, he put no trust in his servants, and his angels he charged with folly. How much less in them that dwell in houses of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, which are crushed before the moth. They are destroyed from morning to evening. They perish forever without any regarding it. They perish. People die. Children get killed. And people don't even regard it. It's a fleeting thought. Even if you're part of the government that carried that out, not only have many ministers, preachers, and Christians not thought about those actions of the killing of children, they actually are still supporting with full vigor, without any questions, any repentance, any wait, we should not have killed kids twice. Not only do we not think about it, we just go out and say, today we support all that we do, all actions taken by us as this country, we support it all, and kids are killed, and we think nothing about it. Doth not their excellency which is in them go away? They die even without wisdom. Now, I thought that was interesting because that's a response of this man, one of Job's friends. That's what he saw in a vision at night. And it was just strange because you can interpret things wrong. I shared on one of the previous videos that I had a dream one night, and there was a bunch of these switchblade knives all over the ground because I had bought, a lot of my friends these last few years had nice switchblade knives. And as a kid, I used to like switchblade knives. I don't have the one I'm talking about here because I finally bought one. But I got a barber's knife Andy gave me. But either way, my friend Andy, I was doing a fellowship here, and he had this. I said, oh, I like that because Ezekiel talks about a barber's blade. So Andy gave that one. I gave a nice one to Crow. We give things to each other. I gave Crow like $1,000 real dagger that was saved from my uncle who died, but he was a prisoner of war. I won't share the whole story. He didn't die in the war, but and I had it as a kid. So he was a prisoner of war in Germany. And as a little kid, I always had one of the sword daggers that he brought back. And Crow is a collector of knives, one of my friends. I gave it to him. He's got it. He still has it too, because he likes to collect. So one time I had a dream. These guys all had switchblade knives, and I wanted to buy one because I like knives. And my friends were all showing me, look at this switchblade. I said, where are you getting this from? I want to get one. This store here sells them where I live. They got a pearl handled one, John, like you want. So I went and bought one. And then I had a dream one night in the visions of your head. And all over the ground, there were hundreds of them. Because they sell all types of them. And I picked one. And in my dream, I was picking them up, saying, look how many. And I remember I interpreted it in a way that said, well, maybe there's so many different platforms, sites, things that you can reach out to, places, cities, towns, nations. And I took it as, well, maybe you got enough. But then after that dream, we probably got another 20, different communities, groups, places. That's how I see these platforms, as outreach. Groups of people were reaching out to you. And then that dream could have been taken. There's a whole lot more. I'm giving you gifts, every good and perfect gift. So the point I'm making is I might have interpreted that dream wrong, though it seemed to be significant. And it could have been, there's a bunch of blessings I got coming your way. So this man, Job's friend, we'll end with this, as he has a dream, the vision from God to this friend of Job was, is man just? Is man, like man cannot fathom the dealings and workings of God. Now, Job's friends at this point are critiquing Job because of his plight, and they're bringing up good, sound wisdom that you will find also in the book of Proverbs. That does the curse come unless there's a cause for it, Job? There's a lot of good things they're telling Job, but at the end of the story, Job, for the most part, his friends basically, nobody was perfect in the story of Job. The response of the friends, and even Job at the end, though he was just and upright according to the testimony of God, but he himself could not figure out the workings of God. So there's two ways you can take that very interesting vision that I just read to you, which was in Job chapter 4. I found it interesting. Because Job's friend, when he had that vision, could have been interpreting it that, this is about Job. Because his friends were all saying, you must have done something wrong, Job, for this to have come upon you. But because the curse causeless does not come. So I could see how quickly, if I had that vision and I was correcting Job, and then God gave me a vision that said, man thinks he's just, and who can ever be just before God? And I'd wake up and say, see, Job, God told me that was you, Job. But as I looked at that little vision, that little encounter, like the dream I had of the switchblade, and then as you meditate on it, that could have been a message for Job's friend. Because his friends were basically saying, this thing that's happened to you, Job, these trials and tests have to be a result of some type of sin that you committed. And we know from the testimony of God that Job was just and upright because God testifies of that in the book itself. That Job is a perfect, upright man, but this thing that he went through was by the permission of God. He allowed the enemy to do it, but it was by the permission of God. So it's very possible that vision that we just read, go read it again, Job 4, was a message to that man himself. Because they were all thinking they were figuring out why this happened, something you did wrong, Job. And in the counsels of God, they didn't see the beginning of the book where God basically says, Job is upright. But because of the counsel of God, I'm going to permit this. And this experience of Job is going to be recorded in the annals of Scripture. It's considered the oldest book written in the Bible, the book of Job. And it will be used for centuries to come to encourage the people of God. And in the New Testament, we'll read, have you not heard of the patience of Job? James will write that. So in God's counsels, the friends of Job and their responses to Job, they were not seeing the whole picture. And so it could have been God telling that friend in that vision, that's for you. I don't know for sure, but it could have been that. Because all God is saying in that is, mortal man, I understand man is of the dust. And my dealings and workings are, in the end, for his benefit. But he cannot figure it all out. He is not designed to figure it all out. He's designed to commit your works in the Lord, and your thoughts will be established. Put your confidence in him. He's seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So I'll end with that because I thought that was interesting. And I intended, this was very quick because this is a practice. I want to do a practice video, but I don't have time to practice. This would be the practice video. And okay, I think I hit it all, guys. Let me end with this. I try not to mix any news, politics, geopolitical events in teaching videos. But as a reminder, those of you that will see this, God willing, as a teaching video in the future, you can always go back to on the dates before on any of those sites, YouTube or any of them. And then you could see I might have been discussing world issues on like one or two before. But the ones that I did mention, I wanted you to keep that in mind. If your children were killed, and then your children were killed again, another, which happens to Job, there would be some thinking, rethinking, some repentance if a country committed that act twice. And many of the Christians living in this country, pastors, ministers, didn't even think twice about it. And if you were to ask them, do you think there should be some questions about the actions? They would immediately be, oh, we support all those. Some would say we support those actions, not knowing even what the actions were. You'd be siding with something that God cannot bless. Suffer the little children to come to me, Jesus said, because of such is the kingdom. So I would just say, without getting political, these are the events that are also playing into the repercussions that are taking place today. As I make this, the world events that are taking place today, as I make this video on a Saturday, the end of February 2022, these events are big events. The taking of the lives of kids on multiple occasions, unjustly, and then covering it up and lying about it, at least in the first case, until they were caught. Speaking of our government and our military. And then for it to happen again, and then to quickly say, he killed himself. Where is the accountability? No country goes around the world killing kids on multiple occasions and then presenting itself as not even a word about it in the public arena. It's a call to repentance. There's also, this is showing you, this is where we're going to reap things. There's a shaking, and it's because of events that we sowed. People say, well, why is this going to happen to us now, these events that are going to take place? Because we don't even think about it. We're not, and these are just two I mentioned on today. Okay, so let's think about that vision of Job's friend as well. Has God been speaking to you? Certainly God spoke to his friend in that vision. But the interpretation of it needed wisdom to understand. And I don't know fully everything about that, but it came to my mind as I read it. But we see God dealing in the affairs of humans, God working with people, and people not able to contain all. And so what they do is they enter in his courts with praise. Lift up your heads, O you gates, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is that King of glory? The Lord mighty in battle, Lord of hosts. Arise, O God, and judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. So I pray for the blessing on all of our friends today. I pray the word of the Lord would go forth. If anything, that there would be a rethinking of how we have responded as the people of God, as those who feel we are called into ministry and into kingdom, are we so concerned about that particular business aspect of what's happening with our ministries, churches, and so forth, that we didn't even think once about the culpability of the murder of children? And not only did many of us not think about it, we still justified it. We still supported it because we were silent about it. Is that what God wants? For us to be saying, please help us with our ministries. Please help us, God. Is that what God wants? God, give me the money so I can fulfill. Oh, do you know some kids were killed the other day? You actually supported that. Oh, I don't have time for that, God. You need to make time. People of God, leaders, voices in society, whether you are liberal, whether you are conservative, whether you're a Democrat, whatever you are, if you don't have time to be concerned with the unjust killing of kids, then you need to reorder and reorganize and speak justice. The Lord, Micah, the Lord hath shown thee, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, how to do justice and to love mercy and walk humbly with your God. Amen. Oh, it's not shutting off. I gotta shut it, guys.